And the way I've parented and the way I've always brought her up is, and I've made a rod for my own back. So when she was young, about 4, driving down the motorway, and obviously you got the pylons, and she asked me what they are. And me, because she got to the phase of, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? I thought, you know what? I'll give her a really complicated, convoluted answer so that it makes her think and just gets her to shut up for a bit. So I explained how they carry an electric current from one power station to another, or from a generator to another. Then from that substation, it gets, brought down from sort of 50,000 volts down to 240 volts and goes into your house through underground cables into plug sockets. Now, ever since then, she won't take like a nonchalant answer. She wants, well, no, you need to give me the real answer. So when she asks, where do babies come from, I can't say, oh, well, the stork delivers them one day. She's like, yeah, don't bullshit me. I don't need that. Tell me exactly. I'm big enough. I'm old enough. I know what I want. So yeah, made her off on my own back that. So we're live. Affan Burki, lovely to have you on the podcast. And before we start, I must have a caveat that we've now known each other for about 7 months. From my transfer from the world of football to the world of hockey, which has been a revelation, if I do say so myself. So if anybody out there that's currently playing football, get into hockey. Because from somebody that played the game for 20 odd years, hockey's by far a better game.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it by far is such a better game and a better atmosphere, better social, better community. It's fantastic. So
The movement is the same. The movement of players around the pitch is still the same.
As long as you can get the hand-eye coordination instead of foot-eye coordination, it's brilliant, and it's slowly coming. I'm getting better every week, so I can't complain. But I am putting in the effort. I'm trained last night, training tonight. Good fun. So Affan, the reason why I've got you on, the reason why I wanted to speak to you, you are the chair of the Burnley Green Party, I believe, the chairman. And it's when I met you, you're so calm. At least the way you play hockey, to be fair, is calm, placid, and just safe, if that makes sense. Not to say that you're a bad player. And I just wouldn't have put you, after doing the research into you, I wouldn't have put you as sort of, 1, ex-army for a start. And 2, I wouldn't have put you in the world of politics. And that's both of what you've done. So for those that don't know your background and where you're at now, give a quick brief rundown before we get into it in earnest.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Lewis. I like to say, I was deeply humbled when you invited me onto your podcast, and given the nature of the guests you've had previously, I hope I can do some justice.
Oh, you will.
In terms of background, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country when I was 5 years old. As you can probably tell by the accent, I was raised in Manchester. At the age of 18, I went away to uni, went to study in London, and then I commissioned from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, and I spent 10 years, or just nearly 10 years, in the regular army, and either side, I spent 15 years in the reserves. So that's nearly a total of 25 years of service to Crown and Country, wearing the uniform. And now in my spare time, I was elected as the chair of the Burnley Green Party. We've been blessed with 4 kids who are absolutely magnificent. My wife is just a superwoman, and I do consultancy work in and around cybersecurity and digital transformation,
Right.
mostly NATO, but I have some other clients as well. And then one of my private projects, which I'm doing off my own back, is creating an app which teaches adults literacy. Because I don't know if you'll be surprised to hear this, but there's a huge proportion of adults in the UK with a reading age of an 11-year-old child.
Well, I had Michael Steer on, who's from Educating Yorkshire.
Right.
And he was saying, like, one of the biggest shocks and one of the biggest problems for him is, like, kids at secondary school, like 14, 15, 16, are reading at like a year 3 level. And he said it's a really difficult thing, and I think, yeah, it's really, I just great that I think one of the biggest problems and the biggest issues, the way I see it, and I see it as matter of fact, is currently there's a massive hoo-ha about phones in the classroom,
Hmm.
and I know there's loads of legislation and loads of activist groups that are talking about getting phones out of the classroom. And the problem is with that, and the problem I see with that is, you, you know, 20 years ago, you took the genie out the bottle and you created the phone. You created this mobile phone. You can't put the lid back on the bottle. The phone isn't going anywhere. Kids, when pushed, are really clever. They'll find ways to get around it. They'll find ways, or they just won't go in school, one of the two. Now, if I'd have told you 20 years ago as a teacher, right, I can give you a device that you can give to each one of your children that will grab their attention, unabated attention for hours and hours and hours on end, and through that device, you can give them whatever information you want. Most teachers back then would go, "What a great idea! What a brilliant idea! Oh yeah, what? Yeah, give me the device, and we can get this into the classroom." Now that literacy app, it's kind of like Duo. I've learned a bit of Spanish off Duolingo. I
Yeah,
find
yeah,
it
yeah,
I find it
yeah.
brilliant. It's so good because you can just dip in, dip out whenever you want. And it's the same with phones. Instead of trying to ban something that isn't ever going to go away and is part of society the world over, people in third world countries, they all have phones. They all
Yes,
have Instagram accounts and Facebook
yes.
accounts. That's not going away. You're gonna have to figure out an ingenuitive way of integrating this within our school system.
Hmm.
Same with AI. I was interviewed on Friday just gone by a guy called William for his podcast, and one of the questions was brilliant. And he mentioned, what lesson would you bring into a school? What if you could bring in or invent a subject at school? What would you bring in? And I cheated, as I always do, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna bring one back, and I'm gonna bring one in." The one that I'd bring back would be home education, learning how to
Okay.
cook, learning
Yep.
how to run a household, learning how to balance, your current account, stuff like that. Home education, I think it's sorely lacking. There's kids that don't know how to cook an egg, which is, you know, that's this is the root cause of stuff like the obesity epidemic is kids and people grow up relying on McDonald's and fast food and ready meals and microwave meals, not knowing actually how to properly cook. And for somebody like from your culture, cooking is the heart of the home. Cooking is where everybody gets together at the end of the day and speaks to each other, and that's where family time happens, is around a dinner table. And that's what used to happen. Whereas now, people stick on the TV, put something in a microwave, wait for 2 minutes, hear it ding, and then wonder and get shocked when they've got cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Well, there's a clear cause and effect. So that's one that I'd bring back. And then one that I'd bring in would be teaching kids how to use AI through their mobile phone. AI is we saw it recently with Elon Musk and Grok and the big hoo-ha about, the child images that it was creating. Or I've not actually seen anything along the lines. However, the problem is, the way I see it, or the way I likened it, is to like a gun. Is the gun isn't the issue. The gun just fires bullets. That's what a gun does. If you've got an issue with what a gun does, then the issue is with the person holding the gun and firing the gun. And it's the exact same with AI, in my opinion. AI is wonderful. It can do so many things, but it can also do so many bad things. It's all about education and how to actually use a thing. I use it on a daily basis. But I think it's so important that kids get taught how to use these devices properly, how to use this technology properly. And I think that I didn't know you were doing that in terms of that app and that literacy, but I think it's so important. It's such a good, yeah, worthwhile avenue to go down.
Do you know, this is it. So this is one of the reasons why I left the army. So I actually, left the regular army to open a free school in Oldham, whereby all of this is in 2014, where all of the teachers would be ex-military who would be trained and qualified as regular teachers. So the idea was twofold. The idea was one to give those the service leavers a really useful vocational employment, whereby they'd be able to use all the skills that they picked up within their service and transfer their skills to Civvy Street
Wow.
for the benefit of the people that the societies that they originate from. And this is Oldham, so you know what Oldham's like. Oldham's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very multipolar town. There's high unemployment rates. There's lots. It's a really challenging area. And then the second part of the school, the benefits that the school would have brought was to be able to educate children to a higher standard than what would normally be expected for children off that region. And I don't mean that in a pejorative manner, because the teachers in the schools that already exist there have a really tough time.
I think teachers in general are just
Uh,
it's a hard profession.
It's
I
very
couldn't
hard.
do it.
They keep cutting, the resources, the funding, and so on and so forth. And really, you have to give it to the teachers. And same with NHS staff and so on. Is that it's because they care about their people that they continue to do the work. Otherwise,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you just go to industry and make more money?
Yeah, it
Sure,
is.
it
And you
is.
can always tell, like, the difference between somebody that in essence the job has maybe broke them and they've had enough,
Yeah.
or it's not what they expected. And then I know, I won't mention him by name just in case, but there's a teacher at my daughter's school that is, I grew up playing football with him,
Hmm.
and he's always been nice lad, not a bad word to say about him. And the way he is with the school, with the extracurricular activities, with the kids, knows them all by name, greets them all by name, knows all the little picadillos, and really, really integrates himself as, you know, we're all taught when we grow up or when we get to a certain age, and if you did sociology at AS level, that you've got primary and secondary socialization. The primary socialization, which is your mum, your dad, and then you've got your secondary socialization, which is teachers, bosses, grandparents, even. And in this current climate that we're in, where kids are spending a lot of time, a lot of kids are probably interacting with their teachers a lot more than they are with maybe their father or their mother or both. That role is so pivotal into a child's development, and there's far too few people that like this teacher, and even Michael Steer that we had that I had on, Mr. Steer, um, that look like they give a shit. They care. They want these kids to do well. They will go through hell and high water to make sure that these kids have the best possible start that these people can provide them.
Far more
Um,
than just educationalists. They're social workers.
mm,
They're life coaches. They are guides. They are counselors. And this is far more than they were, trained to do. Achieve a PGCE.
yeah, yeah. There's no like 8 year of a master's degree in psychotherapy, but they've got to deal with it.
They do. They do.
Yeah, it's
It's
unforgiving.
it's tough. But it goes.
So back
So
back to
I'm
the
not.
school. Sorry.
Well, no, I won't say I'm not a religious person. Admittedly, I am Muslim.
Hmm.
Yeah, but if would I say I'm pious? Probably no, no, I wouldn't. Am I religious? No, probably not. Do I pray from time to time? Yeah. Do I believe in the core tenets of my faith? Absolutely. But I just want to just to relay something about. So Islam comes from a man called Muhammad,
Hmm.
who was born in Arabia in and around 570 AD. And Muhammad was, orphaned shortly after birth, right? So both his parents passed away shortly after birth, and he was raised illiterate. He wasn't taught to read or write. He became a merchant as he grew up, but he could not read and write. Now, as the faith goes, that the angel Gabriel came down to him whilst he was meditating in a cave one day, and revealed the Quran to him, which is, we believe, it's a holy verse.
Hmm.
This is a divine revelation. But do you know what the first word of the revelation was read, Iqra. And Muhammad was taken aback, firstly, by this whole thing about the angel Gabriel's come down and what's going on. And, this is wild. But he responded, well, I can't read. They said, read, Iqra. And then through Muhammad, this huge tome of a book was revealed over the course of, a couple of decades and so on. But the point was, the very first word that he was revealed divinely was to read. Now, this
Read.
goes down to us humans. We're far, far from divine. However, education and the ability to read leads on to so much. It leads
Oh,
on to for you to be able to think critically. It gives you self-esteem. It gives you confidence. It gives you the ability to be able to challenge what people are saying to you, so you don't believe somebody else's word for it. It gives you the ability to be able to detect body language, and because we live in times whereby it's difficult to assess what the truth is.
yeah.
It really is.
I don't even. It's. I think more importantly, so all them points are important, but it gives you the ability to challenge yourself and your own beliefs.
Absolutely.
I know for
Absolutely.
a fact I've changed my. I'm no stranger. I grew up in Burnley.
Hmm.
Burnley is, or was when I was growing up, a very divided town, and I
Hmm.
still think it is. And generally between Indian, Pakistani, and white British, it was very divided. I know. I still probably I haven't had for a while because I don't go socializing that much, but it is renowned for knowing the race riots when they started in Burnley, and I would be remiss to think that I didn't grow up in that melting pot and have them views that were circling at the time. Anybody that says they didn't is probably lying and probably not being honest with themselves. Now, subsequent to that, I've read a
Sorry,
lot.
Louis. Just want to say that's on all sides of the divide.
Oh yeah,
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 so it wasn't
100%.
just the white population. This is and it continues to be not so much now, but it continues to be so. But you're
Yeah,
absolutely
and I think that's the problem. Is I inadvertently read a lot, traveled a lot, lived abroad, lived in different cultures.
you
Um,
left your postcode.
yeah, I did. I did. I left my postcode. I went to the other side of the world on 2 separate occasions, and I think that travel, as well as reading about Islam, speaking to people that are Muslim, speaking to people that are Buddhist, Sikh, Hindu. I've read the Hindu Vedas. I've read parts of the Quran. They're not easy reading, are they? To be fair, none of them is. Neither is the Bible, and although it didn't necessarily, I grew up Roman Catholic, and I grew up. Most would probably say devout Roman Catholic nowadays. I went to church every Sunday. I went to confession on Wednesdays. Said my Hail Marys and Our Fathers, and then I was an altar boy at one point as well. So I would probably class that in today's era as devout. Back then, it probably wasn't as devout as it should be. But I walked away from faith in its totality. I thought, about 14 years old, the
Not for
the
you.
age of this is just all absolute bull. It's nonsense. A man in the clouds in the sky. What a load of baloney. And then over the last probably 4 years, maybe 5, through whatever experiences that I've had and whatever I've read and whatever is I have a friend called Khalid who told me the Zamzam story about Islam and how Mecca became Mecca ultimately, and why it's so holy. And then I did my scientific research and understand that actually still nobody's seen down to the bottom or the source of this
Yep.
magical
Well,
spring
in the middle of the desert.
in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the crossroads that wasn't there previous to and stories like that, and an understanding, reading, learning has led me to believe, or led me to the conclusion that aside from one person, which is Muhammad, we believe in the same God. It's the
Yes.
same. It's the same deity. It's just different words. Allah and God are the same thing, and they're not even the true name of that deity. If you go all the way back to Yahweh, so we're actually using the wrong words, both of us, anyway. But if we believe in the same God and we believe in the same prophets minus one person, then, and then it goes as far back as to the Protestants and Catholics is the fact that they're the same religion, but there's been millions of people murdered and killed over just because what was it?
The
Something,
interpretation.
yeah, different interpretations of the same thing, and ultimately understanding that just because somebody speaks differently or behaves differently or has a different opinion or a different outlook than you do doesn't inherently mean that they're dangerous or bad or wrong. Or I saw something the other day that was really interesting, is there's no such thing as truth. Truth doesn't exist. There's your truth and there's my truth. And we can see the exact same scenario, which is why witness statements and eyewitness testimony in court is so fallible, is because we can both see the same situation and come to completely different conclusions.
It's all about perceptions. And a perception of truth in somebody's head. So it reminds me, so my dad never had a beard, never wore a hat, never wore traditional Asian dress. Was always dressed in a shirt and tie. Came to the UK in the 70s because he was invited over by the British government because he was a qualified engineer.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and I've got to say, he was the most religious man I've ever met. And he never spoke to people about Islam openly. Not without invitation. He never, never pushed anything on anybody. But I say he was the most religious because I never once witnessed him lying to anyone. I never once witnessed him swearing. Yeah, he was always clean, and he just cut about his own business. He went to the mosque, worshipped when he needed to, and came home. Never hung around to do all the social and the politicizing. And wasn't interested in any of that. He was definitely the most religious man I've ever met. And when I was in my late teens and I was beginning to explore things, explore religions and so on and so forth, and we were talking one day, and he said to me, he goes, have you ever challenged Islam? And I was really taken aback. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, have you ever challenged Islam? Have you ever challenged the core tenets of the faith? I went, no, of course not. And he goes, why not? So, well, that we were born Muslim, and it would be blasphemous for me to. He goes, no, it wouldn't. He goes, how do you know that Islam is true if you've never questioned it? How do you know this? How do you know that Christianity isn't true or Judaism isn't true for you if you've never questioned them? And I was like, oh. And then I went through this phase about, I'm going to question the existence of God. He goes, how do you know God exists if you've never questioned the existence of God?
Yeah.
I was really taken aback.
People need to, it's so important to challenge. And it does one of two things. It either, if you challenge your belief in whatever, aside from religion, if you believe in Manchester United, for instance, which unfortunately for all my shortfalls, I have for all my life, and the last 13 years have been absolute torture, but I still believe in Manchester United, and they've challenged me over the past 13 years. But if you don't challenge something, challenge something, it does one of two things. It either strengthens your resolve in your belief of that thing, of that religion, that ideology, whatever it is, or it breaks it, and you can move on to something that is more aligned with you as a person. And I suppose I probably did that with Christianity, and I wouldn't necessarily say I'm Christian now. I believe in Jesus. I wouldn't necessarily say I believe in the church. I think that's the difficulty with me, and I think it's the same with all religions, and with Islam. I might believe Islam, but I might not believe in the sort of the mosques and the imams and all that.
I agree. Have you heard of Cat Stevens?
Yes.
Cat Stevens, now known as Yusuf Islam, has been known as Yusuf Islam since the 80s. My dad loved Cat Stevens. He loved him even more when he became Muslim. And he had a very famous quote, and he said, I am very grateful to God that he introduced me to Islam before he introduced me to the Muslims. It goes to your point that when you challenge the existence of God, certainly I did. I was like, no, God has to exist. However, the interpretation, the practices, the traditions, there's human interpretation and
I challenge to anybody that goes to church or next time anybody's at a christening or a wedding, like a religious wedding or a funeral, for instance, anything that sort of takes place in a church, and obviously I've been in a mosque, but I've not been in a mosque during prayer. And I think one of it's if you look at this, just stand back and try objectively to look at the singing of hymns as an objective practice. It's such a weird thing to be. It's so strange. It's not a normal thing to do, where hundreds of people sing this drony hymn in unison that God didn't write. A human wrote that. It didn't exist. Like it wasn't divine. It wasn't sort of given to us as a human population to worship God. Somebody within the church that is a human being decided that, well, let's all have a sing song. Let's all sing together in unison. It's such a strange practice. When I look at it, and don't get me wrong, when we were all younger, you used to get into assembly at school and used to belt out some hymns and songs, and it was fun. But it is such a strange, like objectively looking at it. I did it at my niece's christening, and I just thought, this is really, I'm going to have to leave. It's so strange. I can't deal with it. It made my skin crawl. It was really cringy. Now, does that mean that I don't believe in God? No. Does it mean that I'm less holy or less worthy than somebody that belts out Hosanna in the highest at top of his? No. Just means that I don't participate in that human element of what is otherwise a superpower or otherworldly being. So, and I think, one of the best books or one of the best religious texts I've ever read was the Bhagavad Gita. It's a Hindu Veda. And the lessons, it's like the Psalms in Christianity and the stories in Islam. It's like the lessons that come through these stories I still use with my daughter now. Like, so I don't know whether you're familiar with it at all, but what happens is Krishna is with I can't remember his name. It's a difficult book to read, and the names are just unpronounceable to me, especially for somebody that's dyslexic. But they're on the eve of a battle. They're on the edge of a battle, and this warrior, who is the prince, who Krishna is in human form advising him, is having to go tomorrow to fight his uncles and his cousins, and basically he doesn't want to kill his uncles and cousins. But if he doesn't ride into battle, then his uncle and cousins will win, and that he'll forfeit his kingdom. And so Krishna speaks to him and talks about your emotions being like horses pulling a chariot. And if you let any of them horses take control, you will lose control of the chariot and you will likely perish and die. And that lesson I still use with my daughter today, is the fact that, when she gets angry or when she gets upset or when she gets frustrated or sad, I'll talk to her about, control your horses. Bring them back in. You're the one in control. You're the one with the reins. It's okay to feel it, but don't let that horse take over and take control, because it's, it becomes the longer it takes control, the harder it is to rein it back in and rein it. And I think that's sort of at the heart of a lot of things. It's the heart of stoicism to an extent for a man and somebody that wants to behave in a proper masculine manner. That lesson, and at the heart of stoicism as it stands, is don't let everything run away with you. Don't get triggered. Don't get angry. And that brings us nice and neatly onto the element of sort of politics that we see at the minute. And it frustrates the hell out of me from somebody that is, I am judgmental. I was going to say I'm not judgmental. I am judgmental, but I am tolerant as well. So I can judge you, but I won't not speak to you, if that makes sense. So if I think you are wrong on a subject, I will probably endeavour and do my best to prove why you are wrong on that subject. However, if it comes to the fact where you're steadfast in your belief, I won't shun you. I won't cast you aside. I just like, oh yeah, that's Affan. He believes Islam. I'm Christian. That's it. That's the end of it. It doesn't define you as a person. Um, whereas what I see in politics now is the sort of the madness and the resurgence of the word Nazi. I never thought I'd see it. I
Mhm.
never thought it would be a thing. I thought as soon as Himmler, I've just watched Nuremberg, which was a phenomenal movie. But as soon as like the Nuremberg trials were over and the Nazi Party was disbanded and the World War II was won and Hitler was dead, that should have been the end of Nazism. Apart from obviously, you've got your underground groups that will always try and start something. But the fact that that word has made a resurgence in mainstream media and into mainstream politics is absolutely baffling to me, because anybody that's used it, or anybody that I've seen or heard that's used it, hasn't actually used it in the correct context. But yet what it does is it's almost that sensationalism of, I'm going to call him something so outlandish that people that can't really be bothered to read and do the research will automatically dislike this man, regardless of his policies or politics. Why do you think it is? Did you see what? First and foremost, why did you get into politics? Why did you want to go down that route? Is there a specific trigger that started it? Or was it did you just fall into it?
No, no, I did fall into it, to be fair, but there was a trigger, and the trigger was the Southport race riots last year. So
Yeah.
I traditionally, for most of my life, I spent a long time in Asian communities, but again, for a vast part of my life, I've spent amongst people who've never met a brown Muslim person before.
Mm.
So when I joined the army, I was one of very, very few British Muslim officers in the army. I remember when I first went to Westbury to go and do my army exams, and we had to stay in a B&B the night before we moved into the barracks the next day to do the exams, which were what, 4 days or whatever it was. The small group of us who were attending the exam, staying at this B&B, decided we're going to go to the local pub to get a meal and have a sit down and a drink and get to know one another. And there was karaoke, and you could hear the karaoke. So Westbury is in the heart of Somerset,
Mm.
this was back in the late 90s, and I remember hearing karaoke blaring out the doors of this pub as we walked in. And as we walked in, the guys I was with, they walked in, and I walked in, and as soon as I walked in, the whole pub went quiet. And I kid you not, the bloke who was singing the karaoke went quiet, so the music was still going, but you could hear a pin drop. And I went to the bar and I ordered some Coke and drinks for the others and so on. And the lady behind the bar, I still remember her face, was shocked at the fact that I was talking to her in fluent English. You know, so I've grown up with this, and I'm quite accustomed, because again, it's not malicious, it's not
No.
nasty, it's just not knowing or never having encountered somebody.
Well,
Yeah,
I've had that experience when I lived
right,
in the States. I
all right,
walked into a bowling alley, and I was the only white person there.
right.
I went to book a bowling lane because we planned nights out for the house, and I thought, oh, I'll go and book a bowling lane. And I remember driving past it. It was in a place called South Orange, in New Jersey, and I drove past it, and I thought, oh yeah, let's Tenpin Bowling. I haven't been for ages. Walked into the bowling alley, and the lanes were packed, and I was the only white person there, and everybody looked like they stopped bowling and just turned and looked at me, and I was like, it's that moment of, do I walk back out, or do I go to the cat? And it was just because it was not normal. It wasn't a thing that happened day to day. White people didn't go to this bowling alley. So yeah, I've experienced that, and it is such a
So what
surreal
happened?
experience.
You just cracked on, and everybody just
Oh
cracked
yeah,
on with this.
yeah,
And
yeah. We went
you know
bowling.
what? 30 seconds of shock,
Yeah.
for everyone, and you just crack. But this is something that grips me about, when, and again, this is not just white extremists. This happens on all sides. Is that there's the fear of the other. They're gonna come in, and so I'll give you an example. When I first joined the army, I went back home, and we used to live in Cheetham Mill in Manchester,
Mhm.
and well, on the cusp of Cheetham Mill and Crumpsall in Manchester. And I went on. This was must have been mid-2000s to go visit my mum and dad. Yeah, for a long weekend. Not seen them in a while. I've been away, and I went back and I said, because Cheetham Hill, if you know Manchester, let's say it's one of the most scenic areas,
Yeah,
right?
my missus grew up in Cheetham Hill.
Right. So that's why I was just talking to her. I said, "How's it going around here? How's everything?" And she went, "Oh, it's getting really bad." And I went, "What, worse than before?" And she went, "No, it's getting really bad." I said, "What? Why is it getting really?" She goes, "All these Eastern Europeans, all these Eastern Europeans are coming here, yeah, making the place very dirty." I was like, "What?" And she went, "Yeah, they're taking all our jobs. They're taking all our jobs." I said, "Mum, you do realise that that's what they used to say about us, yeah, and it's a bit racist." She went, "No, no, 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 no. They didn't say that about us. I mean, this is real. What they said about us was real. This is real." Bless her. And I was like, "No, it's not." And she goes, "Anyway," she goes, "I can't be racist." I said, "Why can't you be racist?" She goes, "Because I'm brown." I went, "No, that's not how this works." But you see, the thing is, it's this thing about, well, it's always the other. It's always the other. It's never, being. And again, I don't think we live in a racialized environment. It only becomes racialized when people bring attention to it. I don't think it's an issue
It's and
unless
this
people bring this up and they
it's
cause
not.
division.
It's not, and this is the thing. This has always been my bugbear with the sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion
Yes.
boards. And right, why are you drawing attention to it? Like
It's a self-propelling industry.
yeah,
It's
it
a
doesn't matter. The fact of the matter, we live in a meritocracy in terms of the fact of if you're the best person for the job, then
and
you should,
generally,
yeah,
generally,
generally you should get the job. End of.
yes,
Now, don't get me wrong. There is people's bias in there with.
and that will always be.
You can't get rid of it. It's your human trait.
Yes,
However, on a national level, is the fact that I look at let's take politics. Let's take one person in particular, David Lammy, and you might not be able to comment on this. Is he the best person for the job that he's in? Is he fuck? He's not. He's not the best
you say
person.
that about former prime ministers.
True. Well, true. True. There is that, but it's like, and then you look at, Diane Abbott. I don't know how she is living. I don't know how she's still alive. Like
Function.
it's, but
But
this
mate,
is.
we live in one of the greatest countries in the world, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, having lived all over the world,
Mhm.
is that me as a brown man of non-native origin in this country, I am still I still have the ability to access social services and social infrastructure and care and medical services and emergency services just like anybody else. I don't have to give a backhander to anyone
No.
for that privilege. I don't have to pay any extra for that privilege. I don't have to phone somebody to get me that privilege. Whereas if you go to other countries, and I'm including Europe in that. I'm including the
Mhm.
Western world. I'm not going to the Eastern world. I'm talking about the Western world in this, right? How we view East and West, right? You go to Europe, you're not getting free healthcare. And if you're not a native of that particular country, I tell you what, when you go to ask for healthcare or ask for social provision, you're getting put at the bottom of that list just because of the way that you look.
Mm.
Whereas in this country, does it happen? Yeah, possibly, but much less so than in any other country. Do I get free education in this country up until the age of 18? Yes, I do. Do I get that anywhere else in the world? You'll be hard pushed. You'll
Mm.
be very, very hard pushed. But again, it's all relative. It's that we're accustomed to things that we take for granted. We
Yes.
really do. And this goes back to your question: is did I want to get into politics? No, but ultimately, I see things going a bit skew-if. And for future generations like my children, I want them to live in this country because I think it's the best country in the world to
It's a
live in.
I feel that's a very tame way that you put that. A bit skew-if. He's very tame in comparison to what I see. But let's be PC and say a bit skew-if.
But again, if pointing fingers of blame doesn't help anyone, because
No,
it puts people in a corner. And when you know what happens when you corner an animal, we're animals. You corner an animal, what's it going to do? 9 times out of 10, if you don't give it an avenue of escape, it's going to fight its way through you. So if I
100%.
start pointing fingers of blame at such and such is saying this and such is saying this, it's really easy to pick problems and holes in things. And this is what people like Farage and Robinson do. That's all they do. They just, oh, this is a problem and this is a problem and this. It's like, mate, that's easy. I can do that. What is not easy is give me a solution. My first, in fact, it was my second military boss who said that to me, because I came to him one day and I was just being a moany little soul, and he says to me, he goes, Affan, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions now, bugger off.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right.
100%.
And when I care about
I think that's the thing that I say. One of the biggest things at the minute that's really, really, really frustrating me. And nobody seems to be screaming about it. And you've got these sensational leaders or populist leaders to an extent, or it's almost rise of populism in terms of Zach Polanski, which is the leader of your party. You've got Nigel Farage, which is the leader of Reform. They, in my opinion, are the sort of blueprint of a populist rising.
Yep.
Nobody has such a meteoric rise like the Green Party has done, if it isn't sort of backed by a little bit of populism. And it has to be, yeah, of course it does. But
politics is a popularity contest. Let's not.
100%.
That's what it is.
It needs to be backed by substance. And I think that's what's been the issue, is the fact that it's generally been, over the past probably 20 years, a vote for the most populist person, whether that be Tony Blair. I mean, it's hard to say. It was at the time. David Cameron, whoever it may be.
Yeah.
And less there's been less focus on, oh, I like him, I like the way he speaks, but what is he about?
Yes.
There's no focus on, but what is he going to do? What is his agenda? And with Zach Polanski, one of the biggest things that I wish he would cotton on to, and I don't know whether you can get a message to him, but the whole thing with tax the wealth and tax the rich. And Gary Stevenson, I'd love to speak to Gary Stevenson.
Yeah.
And the problem for me, and it might be the solution, tax the rich might be the solution, and he might have already done what I'm going to propose. But this year, the UK government is due to collect 1.23 trillion pounds in taxes. Where the fuck is that going?
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
is it currently going? Because that should be more than enough to run the country for a year. So where is that money going? Accountability for the current tax spend should come before getting more tax off wealthy billionaires. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, everybody should pay the fair share. Completely understand. But then you've got to take into account, yes, for instance, you look at James Dyson when the tax codes changed in this country. James Dyson went, yep, see you later. I'm moving over to China because that's where I can make most of the money. And he jobs went, industry went, production went. Yeah, as it always will. And it will do. Anybody that says it won't is lying. It will happen. It might not happen as a mass exodus like the fearmongers say, but it will happen in certain elements. But before that happens, before we start taxing the rich, where is it currently going? Because
no, you're absolutely right.
Where's
the accountability for politicians? So we were at war in Afghanistan for 20 years. 20 years, right? To this day, nobody is able to account for the money that was spent in Afghanistan to the penny. And it should be, because it should be fairly straightforward. Money's 100%. Gone here, money's gone there, money's gone there, money's gone there. Money's gone missing.
Yep.
Money's gone missing. Now, let's take the average service person, for example. The average service person is subjected to a random compulsory drug test. And if you fail that drug test, you're out. See you later. Yeah, no ifs, no buts. Thank you very much. Yeah, you failed in your adherence to the core values and standards of the military. And you know what? You've broken military law. Goodbye. Why do we not have random compulsory drug testing in the Houses of Parliament? These are the people making decisions at the highest possible levels, which influence and impact every single person in this country, every single person. And yet, we don't have sobriety tests. We don't have drug tests for those people. Why not? So you're telling me,
because half of them might fail it. That's why.
oh, and it goes back to the accountability. Now that those people who are in power, you know, are they being influenced and impacted by social and wealthy elites? Of course they are. And if you
Percent. And
and if you
if you don't think that, then you're naive beyond belief, and there's no hope for you.
and if is it those same people who are now sponsoring the rise of the right wing extremism? Because again, this goes back to a search. This is a human endeavor where people, not only in this country but throughout the world, in this search for a self-identity, a national identity, a group identity, something that identifies themselves. So actually, I feel comfortable identifying myself as a Mancunian. Yeah, despite I was born in Pakistan. I wasn't born in Manchester. I was born in Pakistan. I find it difficult to identify as a pure Pakistani because I'm not. Because if I go to Pakistan, they don't accept me as a pure Pakistani. They say you're from Britain. In Britain, I'm not accepted as a pure Brit because
Yeah.
but I identify myself as a Mancunian, and I feel great because now I have a sense of identity. For my children, they're British Muslims, being raised in Burnley, that's their identity. But now, if you have people growing up in society whereby they have to constantly justify their sense of identity, they have to constantly search for that sense of identity, you know, it's very easy for them to be influenced by people who will give them free identity and
Yes.
say, "Hey, mate, you're a Brit, yeah? You're a Brit, yeah? We like a good drink and we like a smoke. We go down to the pub, yeah? And we're all the same. We've got the same skin color. Here's a flag. Tell you what, this flag is your identity." Actually, when you scratch that surface, you've got very little in common with that person because that person's a multi-millionaire who doesn't pay their taxes properly, who has offshore assets, who actually isn't that patriotic because when push comes to shove and they're asked to pay their fair share, they leave the country
Yeah.
straight away. So
The-
when you talk about tax of the Green Party, this is something that really appealed to me because what the Green Party says isn't tax all millionaires unfairly. It says if they have more than £10 million in assets, 10 million,
Yeah.
you tax them 1%. Now, let's put that in perspective. If I've got £100 in my pocket, I'm being asked to give £1 of that to the government,
Yeah.
right? And
I understand
you
the
know,
sort of premise, and it does make sense. I think the thing for me is, and it's almost, I always liken it to, you remember when they banned the XL bully breeds last year or the year before? It was Rishi Sunak, wasn't it? So year before. The thing for me, I've got a bulldog. He's awesome, but I've also had a Rottweiler. Now I know Rottweilers have been responsible for a lot of maulings and a lot of deaths,
yes,
and they've not been banned. And the solution was to ban the dog or ban the breed. When
rather than
what you
train the breeder.
Thank you. What you're doing is you're fighting a symptom.
Yes.
You're not tackling the root cause of the issue. Now, the thing for me with the sort of tax the rich and tax the wealth and tax assets, I think we can all agree, all of us, we live in a capitalist society, a capitalist meritocracy where everybody's able to earn as much as they want with no limits. And if you're the best in a certain field, then you should rise to the top.
Right. Absolutely.
Everybody's on that. No,
And that's why
and
I'm not a left winger. I'm
no,
genuinely,
no.
all power to left wingers, but I'm not a left winger because I don't believe that the state should own the means of production. And I believe that individuals should benefit financially, spiritually, however, through their endeavors. I
100%.
believe that.
And I think the problem is I see that tax issue being treating a symptom
Mhm.
of the root cause, which is corruption, embezzlement,
Uncapped
and
greed.
and politicians we saw it through, and this is the thing. It's out. It's not like clandestine anymore. It's overt. There's somebody, I can't remember her name, but her and her husband, was it 10 million that they got in government contracts that they've been ordered to pay back, and they haven't paid back a penny.
Never mind her, Tony Blair. Tony Blair was
Yeah.
responsible for making a decision to take us to 2 wars.
On
One
lies.
of those have been proven to be illegal, which was the Iraq invasion, was proven to be illegal. That gentleman is still walking free.
And he rises up out of the toxic sludge which is politics to make sure that we all get digital ID. I did a video basically telling him to get back in his box. I don't like that, man.
The thing is, service people who went on the ground to conduct violence on behalf of those politicians who slept soundly in their beds, they either lost their lives and limbs, right, or were being held culpable for decisions that they made on the ground in a theatre of war under the most intense pressure, under the most, situations that, humans would find it difficult to fathom unless they'd been there. And then they're brought back and held to legal accountability, right? Whereas the people who made those decisions for those service people to go abroad in the first place, to be in that situation, aren't being held to account. Now, your point about meritocracy, what I'm beginning to find about, life in this country is that you and I, the working level people, right, we're fed this thing about we live in a meritocracy. We live in a society that has values and standards ingrained within it. But it seems those values and standards are only for us at the lower levels of society, the middle to the working classes. Whereas the upper classes don't abide by them. They pay lip service to them. They acknowledge that they exist, but they pay lip service to them. And so what do we do about that? And again, this goes back to just inequality in society. The inequality is so rife that when you have people who have so much money, if you have assets of £1 billion, right? And it's not just you. If you, the individual, has an asset of over £1 billion, and you are a shareholder in a corporation, which is even worse, has assets over £1 billion, the corporation isn't a real entity. It's not a real human being. The money is sitting there and it's not doing anything. It's not circulating in society. It's not helping anybody. It's not flowing. The economies flow when money flows. However, if people are hoarding money, right, and it's being captured, it's not being circulated. And this is something that tax does. It circulates money because tax, the assets, the wealth.
It's the modern money theory with I've had arguments with people about modern money theory about it. They've basically said it adds steps into a process that doesn't need steps added into, and the whole point of bringing modern money theory in was to stimulate growth within economies. It wasn't
because down economics doesn't work. We've seen it doesn't work. Now, if we create jobs through social services, social infrastructure, if we re-privatize those, the energy and the utility companies, right? What we're doing is we're taking those profits away from the shareholders, which are being subsidized by our tax money anyway, right?
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're granting people jobs to work back for the state, and I think that's a good thing. So not all industry is being privatized, just a national, critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, our utilities companies are being run by a foreign national entity, even if it's a European foreign national entity. The way that things are going, let's say that we're not in the EU anymore because we Brexited. Fine, that was the will of the people, and that's where we are now. Now, let's say we have some acrimony with one of our European neighbours who is also a major shareholder in our national grid. What's to stop them from turning the button off?
Honestly, this frightens me with the housing market and with the property market.
Yes.
Our property laws. I had Kezia Noble on, and she believes that obviously immigration is a big driver in property prices and rent prices.
Yeah,
kind of agree, but I think the same sort of scenario. It's a symptom. It's the root cause of property price hikes and property pricing in the UK is our property laws, which are so bonkers in comparison to everywhere else on the planet, that somebody in Hong Kong, I've seen it firsthand, I've benefited firsthand from this.
Yeah.
Somebody in Hong Kong can buy an apartment complex. In fact, I tell you where it was. Do you remember Northern Quarter? As you come round to the Northern Quarter, on the right hand side, last time I was in Manchester, it was still derelict. So you go past the building that was meant to look like a ship. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And on the right hand side, there's some old red brick buildings before you get to the Northern Quarter. That used to be an umbrella factory. And I achieved planning permission on that for 96 apartments when I used to work for a company. And we didn't build them. We didn't do anything with them. We bought the building for 900 grand. We got planning permission for 96 apartments, and we sold the building for 2.1 million to a company in Hong Kong, like that. No issue, no problems.
This is it. How does it benefit British people?
Not all, because the problem is, obviously, and this is speculation.
Benefits people by placing money into a corporation's pocket, and individual shareholders would benefit from that. But the money is stagnant.
But they do that now with individual houses. So that was a commercial deal, but still property nonetheless. Now they're doing it, I know for a fact, in Eccles. So Eccles was you're talking 70 to 100,000 pounds for a terraced house. It was. Yeah. Now you're talking 200 to 300 grand for a terraced house because of all this foreign investment that's flooded in. It's the exact same in London. It's the exact same in Birmingham. It's the exact same in Edinburgh. All these major cities that have had foreign investment, whether it be from the UAE, whether it be from Hong Kong, whether it be from anywhere else. The problem is, if they decide, if the CCP, for those that aren't educated, the Chinese Communist Party decide, you know what, we don't like the United Kingdom anymore, sell all our assets in the UK.
Just imagine what the impact that would have. Not just on the housing market, but on our economy as a whole.
Everything. It stops. It stops tomorrow. And literally overnight, property prices go from an average price of 280 to 320 grand, probably down to 10, 20 grand again. And that for me is such a dangerous, for instance, like it's just,
but it's not beyond the realms of imagination either, Lewis.
No.
So, this is a scary bit. This is all very, very possible.
And that's the frightening thing for me is nobody seems to sort of know this. Nobody, it's not in mainstream media.
They don't acknowledge it because the wealthy, again, this comes back to, this isn't conspiratorial. Mm-hmm. I'm not a tin hat wearer.
I am.
I am. The wealthy elites, as soon as, the proverbials hit the fan in this country, they're on the first jet out. In fact, 100%. It's not even in this country, in any given country. In Afghanistan, when we pulled the plug in May 2021, as a coalition, as a NATO coalition, the very first thing that the political elites that we empowered, the military elites that we empowered, the very first thing that they did was got on their private jets to Dubai with sackfuls of cash. And that, that's Afghanistan. So here, it's even easier for them to get on the plane, get out of the country before the proverbials really hit the fan. But this is something that
I see it now. Like, and don't get me, I'm not having one of the lads you'll know at hockey. I'll mention him if you don't mind. But Dennis. So Adam, because I had to do it. Gary Neville when he mentioned about what was it? It was something. Oh, that was it. It was about.
I'd like to point out to anybody watching, top bloke, absolutely top. We're talking about an absolutely gleaming bloke.
And then so we were talking. It was the raise the flags when Gary Neville was complaining about middle-aged white men and this, that, the other. And I didn't necessarily take umbrage with his message. I didn't take umbrage with anything else. What I take umbrage with is you, Mr. Gary Neville, have absolutely no skin in this game anymore. You have, in essence, because of your success, and I don't begrudge you your success, you've done wonders. You were an average right back, even this is coming from a United fan. You're an average right back, solid, you made a lot of money, and you've multiplied that money through shrewd investments, property investments, your portfolios. Fucking all hail to you. Well done.
Sure.
But in doing so, you have now forfeited your right to have an opinion at working class level because it doesn't affect you in the slightest. If anything happens bad, like you've just mentioned, Affan, private jet tomorrow. See you in a bit.
Gone.
We're leaving. We're gone.
Gone.
We're same as Gary Stevenson. Gary Stevenson talks about, this economics, that. Walks around, I believe, in a costume with his tracksuit bottoms and his scruffy look and his unshaven beard. It's
Yeah.
you're a multi-millionaire. You're not really scrimping on, 30-week-old ASICS trainers. You can afford whatever you want. If tax the rich or tax the wealthy that he screams doesn't work, see in a bit. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. I've got my millions. I'm sorted for life. And this whole thing with we saw it recently at the Grammys with Billie Eilish telling people that nobody's illegal on stolen land, and it's like, but you're not living in the real world. You can have these opinions, but keep them to yourself because you're not these people.
But then you see
that it affects.
my counter argument to that, Lewis, then is who will voice the disenchanted? Who will voice the disenfranchised if it's not these people? If it's not these people who've been... But Muhammad Ali, for example, greatest boxer ever, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what? He was always after the interests of the common working man.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't need to. Didn't need to. That's my counter argument, is that, well, if they don't do it, then who's going to do it? Because otherwise, all you will have is an echo chamber for the wealthy elites.
But this is the thing. I think people like yourself. There's I can't remember. In fact, you'll know. It's I don't know what's going on at the minute, but the Gorton and Denton by-election.
Yeah.
There's a big hoo-ha about it, and
Anna Spencer.
So I've messaged Anna because I want her on the podcast, and I think it'd be really normal, down to earth people like her, like yourself.
Yes.
They are, in my opinion, the people that should be in Parliament as MPs making decisions because they've lived it. None of these people from Rugby and Eton have ever had to shovel shit out of a trench on a building site.
No, absolutely. But we're living... the political system hasn't evolved. It's not fit for the modern day.
No.
So we're still ruled by people educated in public schools down south. And that's a fact. Now, let's change that. So if you look at the Roman Senate, Roman senators, right, would have their basically their wealth or their assets assessed on the day that they entered the Senate. And on the day that they left the Senate, they'd have their wealth and their assets assessed again. And if there was a great discrepancy, questions would be asked as to how did you make so much money while you were working for the public good?
Yep.
It's a fair question. And if they could answer that through an audit, right, reasonably, they kept the money. If they couldn't answer that reasonably, as in,
back to the people.
You know what, I've sorted me and my mates out because of my position in power. I mean, God forbid that doesn't happen in our house apartment. But now, if that happens, firstly, that person should go to jail.
Yes.
For misusing their seat, their public seat.
It's abuse of office.
Secondly, they should pay all that money back. Like, what was it? Michelle Monet, that was her, Lady Monet.
Yes.
They should not be allowed to declare themselves bankrupt and say, well,
not my problem anymore.
I don't have any money. I'm bankrupt. So, you know what? See you later.
Yeah.
And, you know,
well,
again, it goes back to changing the system. And we can't keep using the same system.
No.
The system isn't fit for purpose.
It's not, and it's not a fault. I mean, I was speaking. So, for those that have heard this story from me before and heard this breakdown, so to understand the political system, and this is why when I hear Labour and Keir Starmer and call out Nigel Farage's New Kids on the Block and this, and now Zach Palensky, because there's been like a big social media hoo-ha about attacking Zach Palensky. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a big supporter of Zach Palensky. But what makes me laugh is Labour members and Labour people that vote Labour, Labour voters, have such a short-term memory because just over 100 years ago, you were the new kids on the block. Because Labour's it was born 1890, but it only got traction 1900 to 1910. Like, so you didn't exist for the whole time Parliament's been in power, which is from like the 1500s. You've only been here for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, you have no right to tell anybody who's a new political power, new kid on the block, you displaced liberal Democrats.
Yes.
So the birth of the sort of political system, or the two-party system that we generally see within England, started in 1566, I believe, with the separation of the Tories and what were called at the time Whigs.
The Whigs, yeah.
Whigs turned into the Liberal Democrats. So
the HITS.
Not Whigs on your head. So, and what the Conservatives believed was a centralised power. They wanted to give more power to the king and to the crown. And the Whigs believed in liberalism. They wanted the people to have the power. Therefore, that's where the birth of our modern system started. That went on and on and on and on and on up until the 1900s, when Labour came about, and subsequently Labour displaced Liberal Democrats that have just fallen off the face of the planet, which is quite surprising. But they then took over and became a party for the people, whereas the Conservatives have been all the way through a party for centralised power. Now, this is the thing that I take umbrage with all politicians, all political parties, all governmental organisations and agencies. You've seen this firsthand. So, for instance, let's look at NATO. That whole sphere, whether it be NATO, United Nations, 100% should be down to governmental level. That's it. Nobody else should have an opinion. Nobody else should have an input. It should be governmental decisions made for them agencies. When it comes to sugary drinks in Nando's, Keir Starmer, fuck off. I don't need your help on this.
Absolutely. This is overreach by the government, telling people what to do and what to think. And that's wrong.
And that's the thing that I struggle with in terms of the digital ID system and stuff, which is obviously he's backtracked on so much from where he started on. He tried to take a hard stance and then realized, this is suicide. I need to sort of really renege on this. But the whole thing of governmental overreach is most people, and you've mentioned already, is like you're not left wing or right wing, and neither am I. I'd probably say I'm more centralist right, if at all.
I'm more right than left.
Yeah, and I think that's 95% of the country are pretty central. And then you've got the polarization of far right, far left, and that's what the media portrays.
Sure.
But I think what most people want is it is really. I've always said this, and I say this about a lot of things. Same with hockey. Hockey is a simple game. It is really simple. It's not easy, but it is simple.
It's simple.
And it's the same with politics. It might not be easy, in government, it might not be easy, but it is simple. Is the fact that people want trains to run on time, that work. They want buses that work. They want economy that's healthy. They want to be able to afford a house. They want to be able to afford energy and heating and food. That's basically it.
Just have a decent life. Have a decent We live in one of the richest countries in the world, right? Just the fact that we have food banks, to me, is an abomination.
It's shocking.
It's an abomination. The fact that, we have so many billionaires and millionaires in this country, and yet we have people living below the poverty line in this country is just repulsive. So, just to take a step back as well, is that the Green Party doesn't just appeal to me because of its, its common sense stance on tax and, its perspective on wealth. It's also, other common sense aspects like, the decriminalization of drugs. So
we saw it in Portugal. Portugal, that it's been a huge success story.
That's exactly it. So this isn't a case of you're just legalizing drugs. No, it's not legalizing drugs. It's
Decriminalizing.
decriminalizing. And there's a big difference.
A huge difference.
And you just mentioned Portugal. In Portugal, right, drugs are decriminalized. It doesn't mean that the population of Portugal are all heroin addicts. In fact, quite the opposite.
It went down. Drug use went down.
Drug use has dropped. It's plummeted.
Yep.
Holland, they legalized cannabis years ago, decades ago.
You go to Amsterdam, try and find a Dutch person that smokes cannabis.
Oh,
they don't.
But right, this goes back to my point about critical thinking. If you look at Labour, for example, Labour was meant to be the party of the people. It's Labour,
Yes.
It's all the unions, it's the people
yeah,
power.
It was a way.
Who abolished university tuition fees? Was it the Conservatives? Was it Labour? It was Labour. Who took us to these long, lengthy wars? Was it the Conservatives? Was it Labour? It was Labour, right? And again, you look at, right, let's scratch the surface and let's just think a little bit critically, right? So Reform are saying, yes, we want to empower Great Britain. We really do. Okay, how are you going to do that? So they're saying we're going to cut taxes. Great. I love that idea. Cut taxes for me. I want to pay less tax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who doesn't? Show me a person who doesn't want to pay less tax. But why are they only cutting taxes for the people at the top who have the money to spare, genuinely the money to spare? And also, why are they letting corporations off the hook? Corporations, not humans, corporations.
Corporations.
Ultimately, who will be impacted the most? It will be people on the lower end of the social spectrum who require those social services and that tax investment the most. They don't want to decriminalize drugs. None of the parties do, apart from, I think, the Lib Dems and the Greens, of course. But again, who is impacted the most by this? Instead of looking at drugs as a criminal issue, let's look at it as a healthcare issue. Let's look at it as a rehabilitative issue. Let's look at the prison system. Instead of privatizing prisons, where we incentivize the capture of prisoners in a prison so we can feed corporations, let's look at this as a social rehabilitation issue.
Norway, the Norway prison system.
Right.
There's a really good series with a guy called Rafael Rowe. If you've ever watched it, it's the world's toughest prisons.
Yeah,
phenomenal. So
how
for those
good is the prison system?
Unbelievable. Like, so this guy, Raphael, he got wrongly imprisoned for murder, and he spent 9 years in prison until he was he was cleared through DNA evidence. Like, one that always grips me. I mean, I love watching stuff on the Innocence Project and things because I'm so fascinated by people that have. It's really hard for me to comprehend if you're sat in a prison cell for 9 years, knowing for a fact that you didn't do it, and how the mental toughness and willpower to keep going and keep waking up is phenomenal. So commend him wholeheartedly. But what he's done is he's gone to prisons all over the world, and generally it's places like Paraguay, where it's literally a city inside walls that the guards have no control over, and the prisoners run the prisons. However, he went to Norway, and the prison was like a hotel room. It was high security, but it was almost open plan, so they had a kitchen, they could go and make moves.
Very humane.
And what they did was treat the prisoners like human beings,
with respect,
rather than livestock, with respect. And the shocking or the surprising thing for Raphael was they got it in return from the prisoners.
Yeah.
So they treat them with respect, they treat them with dignity, and in return, they got respect and they were treated with dignity by the prisoners. And the reoffending rate in Norway is literally close to zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you've been in, the rehabilitation is that good that once you've been in once, you're very, very, very unlikely to go in again. Whereas in this country, and I think this is the issue, and we see it quite a lot, is there's a bitterness. I think there's a bitterness about the sort of judicial system and the prison system, is the fact that we've seen it with social media post. Nobody should be arrested for a social media post, regardless of what you say, regardless of what you do, regardless of what whatever hateful stuff you can spout on the internet. You should not spend a minute behind bars. When a national news anchor gets caught with child porn images on his computer
nothing
and
happens.
doesn't spend a minute in prison.
Nothing happens.
And this duality, no matter who you are, what party you're affiliated is, this two-tiered policing system and this two-tiered judiciary system exists. And that example that I've just given you there, where a mother of two,
it's multi-tier.
Obviously, I probably simplified it a little bit, but when a mother of two spends 2 years in prison for a social media post, but yet somebody that has been caught basically circulating child pornography doesn't spend a minute behind bars. What are we doing as a society?
Again, that mother of two, she's been influenced by somebody else, so she's just part of a chain, right?
Yes, obviously.
Why is she being pinpointed and picked out? Why not go to the origin of the chain of the person who sits there in a very posh Southern Counties accent, talks very confidently and loudly and says, was it a Muslim who committed it? I don't know. Was it an immigrant, a darkie? Well, I don't know. Because he's clever. And he's been educated very, very well. And he knows how the law works. And he knows how not to be gripped by the law. Because he's not stupid. He's very, very cunning. But why are we stopping at that individual, that mother of two, who's just part of a big chain? Why are we not gripping them very confidently, where a guy who speaks like this, and, I'm a man of the people. Why are we not gripping him?
But this is the problem, and this is the crux. But this is the crux of the sort of free speech argument, and me and my missus have had arguments over this. Is regardless, if you're a purporter and a supporter and a believer of free speech, then you have to risk at any point something completely bonkers and outlandish being said. At that point, like we were talking before, it is not the government's responsibility to police that. It is society's responsibility to police that.
Absolutely.
Now, anybody can come out and say, all white people. Well, this is a common myth, isn't it? All white people smell the smell of BO and sweat.
Right, but that we're gone.
It's like from when I was growing up, it's like we smell in China, we smell a milk because we have milk with our tea. So, for instance, anybody can say that, but then it's society's job to turn around and say, well, that's complete bullshit. We're not listening to you. You're absolutely off your rocker. See you in a bit. We'll shun you from this conversation because we're now no longer including your opinions in the rest of our civilized society. It is not the government's job. So
the truth of the matter is as well sorry, Lewis, sorry to interrupt you. With the truth of the matter is with that now, with the advent of the internet, right? People take posts on the internet as this post belongs to one human being.
Yes. When it's reposted, rewritten.
Working in the world of cybersecurity, and the world of AI, right? I know very well that one post does not equate to one human. There are, let's say, state actors who claim to be our friends, not just open enemies, right? Not just open adversaries. There are state actors who claim to be our friends, right? Who have armies of bots tending to be one voice and being an echo chamber for this vocal minority. And it is a vocal minority.
Yeah.
And I'll say that the minority isn't down to the color of your skin. Minority now in this day and age is down to the way that you think. And going back to what you were saying is that typically the village would decide who the idiot was and then shun that idiot into silence. That doesn't happen now because the village is a global village and it's being governed by bots, essentially.
Those figures released Well, recently it was like, is it 70, nearly 70% of all internet usage and traffic is bots and AI rather
Of course
than
it is.
actual human beings. It's
Of course it is.
absolutely bonkers.
Of course it is. But again, people take that as reality because if you're sat on your own and you're disconnected from your fellow human being,
Yes.
right? So, for example, I used to know all my neighbors growing up on the street I grew up on. Today, I don't know my neighbors. I know my neighbor on one side, and I sort of know my neighbor on the other side, but it only goes as far as about two houses each way.
Yeah.
And and that's unfortunate because then what that means is I'm now so disconnected from my society that I live in. I'm a stranger in my own world.
Yes.
And now, so I take comfort and solace in that online cohort that I belong to. And we are now an echo chamber, but it's difficult for me to decipher whether I'm talking to a human or talking to a bot because I don't know
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they are that advanced. You
Yeah.
know, you and I
Well, you've
both
seen
use
some
AI.
some of the AI videos are just
Ridiculous,
unbelievable.
ridiculous. But the point is that now what I'm doing is that I'm so disconnected just from other humans. I'm really easy to influence. And
Mm,
now, once that society has been broken down into individual units of one human, one human, one human, it's now easier to rebuild and repackage those single humans into
mm.
blocks of mental models. So this goes back to my point about minorities not being, in my opinion, related to the color of your skin or your religion and so on. It's related
Ideology.
to the way that you think, your mental model that you ascribe to. And
Yeah.
it's much easier then to compartmentalize and categorize, especially if you've got digital IDs as well, for example.
Yeah, yeah,
And then to, because you have targeted advertising and so on and so forth. But now, how about instead of targeted advertising, you have targeted messaging?
yeah. Mm.
How about that? How about now, if I know that you are of a particular political persuasion, right? And this is the way that you think. Now, I start feeding you what would be an echo chamber, and I start guiding you to follow a particular path that I want you to follow. And I know this sounds very nefarious and very conspiratorial, but again, it's not beyond the realms of
It's
imagination.
it's not, and I think it does happen. I see it. I see it on my Instagram feed. See it all the time, and generally, I'll get my Instagram feed to where I want it, where it's generally interesting facts, interesting
Yep.
people, pearls of wisdom, bit of stoicism,
Yep.
bit of feng shui, whatever it may be, um, and and generally it's perfect. And then what'll happen is I'll be sent a video, whatever it may be, and I'll click on it, and then that's it. I get videos of this, this car crash, and then this car crash, and then this car. I'm like, I only looked at one. I didn't. I didn't want all this stuff on my feed, and
Do you ever
and
get
I
do you ever get anything that challenges your core
very little,
persona?
very little, unless I go looking for it. Very, very little. The good place for that is Reddit. Reddit is really good for it. What it tends to kind of show, it's still quite biased, so it'll show maybe two things that are in favor of you, but it will also show the other thing that's sort of against what you believe. But it brings me to the point when you mentioned about this echo chamber and whatnot. And I asked Kezia Noble about this. Is I the sort of I don't know whether it started in the States or it started here. I can't remember which one was first, but you've got Rishi Sunak. Maybe David Cameron. Maybe it goes back to David Cameron. So let's look at David Cameron and the Brexit referendum. Then you look at Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton and Trump, and then Trump and Biden. And then you had Rishi Sunak and now Keir Starmer. The sort of birth, and I think David Cameron and Brexit was probably the first thing. The birth of this suicidal politics of, he called this referendum on Brexit. Whether he was forced to do so, or whether he wasn't,
He made the
neither it.
decision.
He made the decision ultimately. Now, as I can commend him on one front, is the fact that look, he's he's giving the people a choice. That is what a leader should do. What he did after is what a weasel's and coward's way out. You know,
He resigned.
Yeah, he resigned because he didn't get the
Immediately.
decision that he wanted on the
Yeah,
referendum.
immediately.
Now, the problem is with the prime minister is as soon as you become prime minister, all your opinions, see in a bit, they don't mean anything anymore.
We'll stop at you.
You are a vessel of the people. Your opinions mean jack shit. You can vote like the rest of everybody else, but your opinions mean nothing. Your job is purely to enact the will of the people. That is it, in principle. Now, he must have known before calling the referendum, close call this could really blow up in my face. And if he didn't know that, he should have known that. Then you have Trump and Biden. Now, anybody that's a Democrat, look, in the Democrat Party, whether you're a senator, whether you're a congressman, whatever, you look at Joe Biden and think, holy fuck, how are we going to win this? Like, he can't string a sentence together. Like, and regardless of policies, you've got to be able to tell people your policies. Now, that to me, if you're a Democrat, right, we're going into this election with no hope whatsoever. This is suicidal. We need to sort something. Nothing happened. And lo and behold, there was a bit, there's ums and ahs about that election anyway. Then you go into Rishi Sunak, and then it was more so the race for number 10 between him and Starmer. And they were having the debates. And then Starmer said all the right things. Lo and behold, he's reneged on pretty much everything he said running up to it in terms of taxes and energy bills, and you will not pay a penny more, which everybody does.
Who's holding him to account?
Nobody, and this is the problem.
Same with Brexit. They lied over the reasons why we should leave Europe.
You know what? I made a decision on Brexit. I'll come back to. I'll carry on that point. But I made a decision on Brexit when. We had one side saying this, you had one side saying that, and I couldn't believe either of them. So I did my own research, and there was an independent movie or documentary made by, it wasn't for or against Brexit, but it was the movement of European Parliament from Strasbourg to Bruges every month when European Parliament convenes, and they move everything. And he was outside with a camera looking at all the Arctic trucks. And it's, I think it was 350 million quid it costs to move it every month.
Wow.
And the reason why they do it is because all the countries won't vote to move it permanently to Strasbourg or move it permanently to Belgium. So they're now stuck in this bureaucratic nightmare of having to spend 350 million quid a month. So that was the thing that tipped it for me. It was like, I don't want this level of bureaucracy within my government. However, so the thing, going back to Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, when they were in the lead up to the election, I personally thought at that point it was neck and neck up until Rishi Sunak mentioned national service and conscription and all that. And I just thought, why? Who's advised you? Who's told you that national service, coming out of national service, would be a good idea? Whether it's in your
somebody who's never served.
Yeah, whether it's in your manifesto or not, whether it's in your plans or not, you don't make it a pivotal point of your campaign.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And I thought, like, if I can see that, surely his advisors must be like, "Oh, Rishi, this is a bad idea. Don't do it."
But you see, it comes down to it was all a distraction. It's all a distraction. Let's look at it. Let's look at it this way, right? The Conservatives headed up a policy called austerity, right? Before they came up with austerity, I had to look up what austerity meant because I'd never come across the term austerity. I'd come across the term austere, right? Something austere, right? Got it. Austerity as a term, as a policy header, right? I had to look it up. And essentially what they were saying is that the rest of the country, you need to tighten your belts. Talking down, right? We're all right. I mean, we're okay. We're going to give further tax cuts to the wealthy. So good luck to you. But the rest of you, for the better of the nation, for the good of the country, tighten your belts. Let me know how that works out for you. And that's exactly what happened. Now, so that's all national level. Like, I don't know. I've never sat in Downing Street. I don't know how they work and so on and so forth. I look at the local level here in Burnley. Let's look at Burnley. Right? I look at the local level and I judge people by their actions and not their words. I looked at the councillors in Burnley, and I'm not disparaging councillors from any other party. I'm only going to talk about Green Party councillors. We have 5 Green Party councillors who, run on an absolute minimal budget with volunteers.
Mm.
Okay. And the 5 councillors that we have are absolutely tremendous. Genuinely, they're such good, wonderful human beings who are only doing what they're doing in the council for the benefit of their communities. And clearly, it benefits them because they live in that community.
Yes.
And I go back to, why should the wealthy align with the Green Party's understanding of the tax system or reshaping the tax system? Because actually, what happens is that you're not just making life better for, let's say, the lower end of the social spectrum. You're going to make life better for yourself, because I tell you what, where there's poverty, there's crime. And this goes back to our conversation
Yeah,
about the prison system. Wherever there's poverty, there's crime. Now, let's say we declare a war on poverty. Okay, we reduce poverty. Instead of having a war on drugs, let's spend that money and the time and the resources. Let's fight a war on poverty. Let's reduce poverty. We therefore have less crime. That's a fact. That is scientifically proven. When we have less crime, yeah, and I send my children out, I'm less worried about them having to confront somebody with a knife, because that somebody with a knife generally tends to come from a background that's riddled in poverty. So if
yeah,
there's
it's
less
need.
poverty, there are fewer people out there who want to take something from me and mine. And so this is a benefit for society. And again, the more that society itself is disintegrated by encouraging personal interest, encouraging greed, encouraging the benefit of the individual, and so on and so forth, and we can replace that. And this is what the majority of people in this country, and not even in this country, in the world, want to do, is they want to have that social identity back again. They want to have pride in where we live. And this is, and again, I don't see anybody else proposing that offer.
Mm.
I don't see it. I
No.
see the offer that Reform have is to, attract the really angry, disenfranchised, disenchanted people of Great Britain, but there's no solutions. So this is like saying, yeah, we're going to go and invade Iraq because Iraq, it's run by Saddam Hussein and he's a naughty man. Got it. What's the plan after that, boss? We'll figure it out when we get. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. We went to Iraq. We got in
There's
there.
no exit. There's not thought through. I mean, you
So
saw it with the exit. Yeah.
Great idea. Let's replace that evil tyrant. Got it. And then there was a civil war. And then Iraq was a very, very advanced nation at that time.
It was. You see that some of the pictures
2003.
from like early 2000s and 1990s. It was
Very
beautiful.
Yes. And then it descended into civil war. Because it descended into civil war, it then not only had an impact on its regional partners in the Middle East, it had an impact on the globe.
Well, of course it does.
Hear about this global jihad. Global jihad. Then we had bombings in the UK in 2005. We had, and it continues to this day. But
well, you look at that Middle East element. All the countries, and I mean, I've got my own opinions on it, and I think, I've never been there, I've never lived there. I've done a hell of a lot of reading on it, and I've got friends and family that are Iranian. I've got friends and family that are from Afghanistan, and I think the problem for me is when it's almost that age-old thing, better the devil you know.
Yeah.
Is in terms of, I don't agree with what Saddam Hussein did. I don't agree with the genocide that he purported to carry out. However, was Iraq better under him then than it is now? And I would make a strong argument that yes, it was probably a better, stable, a lot safer country for a lot of the people. Now, does that mean that he's the answer? And does that mean that he's no? It doesn't. However, we stuck our nose in and made it worse.
Well, this is it. And not only do we stick our nose in, we have thrown money into that country. We have thrown money into Afghanistan. We've thrown money into other nations. Whereas actually, we could have used that money ourselves. Again, this goes back, it is very selfish. It's very selfish of me to say that. But ultimately, when we are one of the richest nations in the earth with one of the greatest amount of international influence, why do we have people going to sleep hungry? Not out of will, not out of will, but out of, obligation. Why do we have that? And
It's
who's
there- there's
responsible for that?
there's a there's a passage in the book. I mentioned the book before we press record. *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. Brilliant book. And there's a part in it where he mentions about multiculturalism and
Mm,
diversity, and it's it's a perfect example of talking about reading. It's given me like a bit of a new, fresh perspective on um, this multiculturalism, which it seems to be at the center of a lot of debates at the minute, whether immigration and illegal immigration and this and Britain first and so on and so forth. But every great civilization that there's been, whether you look at the Egyptians, Sumerians, Romans, Mongols, the Spanish conquistadors, the English, Great British Empire is the biggest empire that there's ever been.
yes,
The reason why that they were so successful was because the culture that conquered, and an empire is only ever built through conquering another uh, state or territory. It's never done through diplomatic means as much as people think it might be. It's always through conquering. The reason why empires grow so big is because the culture that conquered the other culture stays relatively unbroken. It
yes,
stays the same. And you saw it with the British culture in India is regardless of how it was done, and don't get me wrong, I'm not agreeing with the way that it was done because there was many millions of people killed. However, there's a part in the book where he talks about, right, if India wanted to go back to what it was before British rule, then they would have to use British values and British systems, i.e., democratic systems, judiciary systems that are all British, to determine that that's what they wanted to do, which in itself is sort of like a false economy. Now, the thing that I see with, like you mentioned, nobody is inherently born racist. Nobody is inherently born not liking somebody because of the color of the skin or anything along those lines. It's just something different. The problem that I see is when the core values of a country start to change that no longer make that country what it was previously, that's when the downfall and the problems will start to arise, which is what happened in Iraq, where you're trying to go into a country in the Middle East and instill a Western democracy that's never been there before, and you think it will just work. You think it will just take off and nobody will question it, nobody will fight against it, and everybody will just go, "Oh, thanks for this. Brilliant. Yeah, we'll carry on with this idea."
well, look, from my understanding, it's strange enough that the person who led Iraq before was democratically elected. Saddam Hussein overthrew. So no, no, they. So even China. So this is a bit of a misconception. China, which is a socialist state, okay. So they have democratic elections to elect their representatives from each region into the National Assembly. So democracy is not something that's alien to people. What's alien to people is being told what to do by a foreign power. So when we talk about you know i- implementing democracy in a far off nation, actually what we're saying is we don't like the person in charge now, and we want to have somebody there who's more friendly to our national interest. And again, that's you know what that's that's human nature.
That's
History
it's
unfolding.
statecraft at
It is.
ridiculous levels.
It is. But again, I go back to our local level because that's way
Yeah.
beyond my pay grade. Way beyond my.
we ain't
But
going to do anything about that,
Hey,
Affan, unfortunately.
Burnley, the way I see Burnley, you're right, it's very multipolar. So you
Mm.
have white areas, you have Asian areas, and in those Asian areas, you have Pakistani areas, Bengali areas, Indian areas, and you go back to Manchester, growing up in the 80s and 90s, you had black areas, you had white areas, and you had Asian areas, and you didn't transgress into those areas outside of work hours.
Yes.
So, and this continues to this day, is that people come together during the working day. Nobody has any issues during the working day because commerce is taking place, interactions are taking place, and everyone's quite pleasant generally. Yeah, unless they have some personal issues anyway. But generally speaking, people are quite pleasant with one another. The interactions are very pleasant, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the working day, you go home. You go home to those areas, and you don't transgress. And you know what? Yeah, you don't invite people of the other to your home. And in fact, people don't invite people to their homes anyway now. You don't really have
No,
that tradition.
no.
This is just one of those things. But the point is that I think I firmly believe that we as human beings have far more in common with one another than we do in difference. And if we
100%.
allow people who are only good at identifying problems to leverage cracks between us, just have a think about, why is this person doing this? I mean, what was it? Tommy Robinson was named in the Epstein files recently as he's really cheap. He's really cheap. So what does that tell you? That one of the biggest supporters of patriotism in the UK, or self-proposed supporters of patriotism in the UK, has been for sale for the last 20 years.
Mm.
That's what it tells me. I don't know the bloke. I hope he's a good bloke. I'm sure he's a good bloke. But ultimately, what it tells me is that he's a mouse for rent.
Well, and this is the thing. So I've had this conversation. So I had a singer-songwriter on called Rain McMay. Brilliant, really good politically. He does politically motivated songs. Fantastic, really good. But I was speaking to him about these, outside of the political sphere. So you got Zach Palensky and Nigel Farage, which I identified, not we. I won't drag you in on that one. I identified as these sort of popularist leaders. But then outside of that political sphere, but very much in it at the same time, is you've got players like Elon Musk, Tommy Robinson, Andrew Tate.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? You've got a fair few. I can't name them off the top of my head. But you've got these figures that seem to have a lot of sway, a lot of influence. And the problem for me is not one of them has, like you've mentioned, a solution to the problem that they're constantly shouting about, constantly advertising. Now,
apart from the only solution that they recommend is kick all the non-whites out.
Now that's fine. How? You tell me how, because it's impossible.
Well, let's say, okay, let's theorize on this, right? Let's say in this country, anyone that doesn't have white skin gets kicked out. Doesn't matter where they go to.
When I'm left, I'm bollocksed because I can't get a taxi anywhere. I can't get a train anywhere. If I hurt myself, there ain't any doctors knocking about.
But then, right? Let's say then that the white people in this country are empowered to become, the taxi drivers, the doctors. They're educated enough to become doctors, and they take up all the roles. They open up shops and small businesses and so on and so forth. Let's say that happens, right? So now you've got this wealthy elite that's managed to kick out a scapegoat demographic. Because that's what it is, right?
That's a perfect description. I love that description.
Gone from the country now. Who's next? Because you think they're going to stop there? Genuinely, do you think they're going to stop there? Who's next? I'll tell you who's next. It's those people on welfare, because you know what? They're leeching off the state. Everyone else is working really hard. Yeah, these people on welfare, they're disgusting leeches, and they're taking our money, our hard-earned money. Let's get rid of them. Can't kick them out. So what do? I know. Let's put them in camps. where they're confined and we give them 3 small meals a day. Oh, right. Okay. Well, these camps are now taking up expenditure and resources from the state. What should we do with these people? In fact, the welfare people, they're in camps now. But what about the disabled? Yeah, because they're not productive members of society. Let's put those in camps as well. What about the gays? Yeah, what are we going to do with the gays? Let's put those in. Hold on a minute. Have we seen this before somewhere? Has
Yeah,
history
well,
in the last 100 years shown us this before?
and
Because if you think that they're going to stop at the non-white,
that's
you're
the thing.
mental.
And don't get me wrong, like I've said this before, I'll say it again. I don't think, as much as people, and I think you yourself have alluded to this, not said it outright, alluded to it, but I don't think Nigel Farage is dangerous. I don't think he's got the brain. I think he's very clever in the way he can speak to people and manipulate people, but I don't think he's got the brains to set up what is many people's fear that are opposed to Reform UK. I don't think he's got that in his locker. I really don't. I tend to be a pretty good judge of people like that.
So you don't believe, like me, that he's the top of that pyramid?
Currently, I think he is, just based on public profile.
Okay, a public profile, but realistically speaking,
Now,
is he getting his messaging from somewhere?
I don't think he is. I don't think he's getting his messaging from somewhere. However, my concern and my worry is if he establishes himself as the opposition and becomes prime minister and achieves all that he wants us to do, and all power to him. We live in a democracy. That's the way it works. My frightening concern is the person that comes after him, the person that he's paved the way for within that setup. That's my concern, not him. There's too much noise being thrown about him. It's the person in the shadows. It's the person. I'm not going to say it because I
But
don't.
you're right.
I'm not.
No.
I'm not liking. I'm not. I don't want to liken them to.
That is a very, very
Germany,
viable and a feasible outcome, because the person that comes after him, whether it's a him or a her, will be far more draconian.
Well, they can do what they want. The way has been paved.
Yes,
and that's the frightening thing for me. Is
for me.
I understand the message. I understand the thought processes and the motivations behind Nigel Farage. I really do, and I can empathise to an extent. Doesn't mean I agree, but I can put myself in his shoes. Just for those that don't understand what empathy means, doesn't mean that I'm a supporter. It means I can put myself in his shoes and understand how he's got to his opinions and how he's got to where he's got to. Now,
but I will ask you for the motivation. You see, the thing is, as well, is that I can understand how he's arrived at those opinions. What I question is his motivation.
So the motivation for somebody like Nigel Farage is it sums up. Everybody's seen the meme, Ron Burgundy, where he's looking in the mirror and he turns, he goes, "Hey everyone, come and see how good I look." That's the motivation for Nigel Farage.
Do you think it's pure vanity, or do you think 100%. There's an element of financial benefit?
I don't think. No, he doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the money. He's got enough money to live off. I think it's purely, I was prime minister once. That's what it's, and I think there's an element of that in everybody that goes for that leadership role.
Sure.
And same in your party.
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, and for instance, I still think Labour, when Labour missed a massive trick. I think they could have been such a stronger party when it was the battle for leadership between the two Miliband brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Ed and David. And I tell you what now, if David was chosen by the party, I would have voted Labour. But instead, they chose Ed. That I just... he doesn't represent anything to do with this country. He's not the brightest. He's not the cleverest. He's not the best looking. He doesn't bring anything to the table for me. Now, this is the issue. But David didn't want the leadership position, and he ended up staying in New York and doing his banking and living. And it's generally the people that don't want power that should be in the position of.
Yes. But going back to your point about, let's say,
So,
okay, Nigel Farage, this is a vanity
mm,
operation for him where he wants that, I am the prime, and
that's the
okay,
pinnacle. Yeah.
let's take that for example. Now, would you rather vote for a person who wants that, or would you rather vote for a person who wants the greater good? And the reason why, I like Zach Polanski,
Hmm.
genuinely, I like Zach Polanski is because he was one of the he's he's a gay Jew,
Mm.
right, from Manchester. And as far as I'm concerned, I challenge pretty much everything that he says, and I find it difficult to pick holes because I think what he says is very robust. I think
Mm.
the arguments that he poses are very robust, and then I question his motives, and then I can't find holes in his motives because ultimately he's not a millionaire. He openly decries the behavior of the state of Israel,
Mhm.
you know, and he makes it very clear there's a big difference between the actions of a Zionist state versus the actions of, a Jewish people, and there is a
Mhm.
huge difference. And and again, going back to his motivations, is that what motivates him, in my mind's eye, is the greater good of our country.
The thing I've mentioned, I don't know whether I have mentioned this before, but I've definitely mentioned it online. The thing that turned me off Zach Polanski, and the thing that made me very wary about him as a person, not the Green Party, but
Yeah,
him as a person. There was an interview, I think it was the BBC that did the interview, and I I was interested in it because I'm a big supporter, not necessarily of the um, current system of proportional representation that's employed in New Zealand and places like that. I think there needs to be a new system
yes,
created in this country of proportional representation where the majority of people are represented at national level. Local levels is completely different. And whether you separate the two things or whatever, there is something to be done. And I think it needs to be done. And because he was a big supporter of PR, I was interested in him. However, the interviewer asked if proportional representation led to the fact of Nigel Farage becoming prime minister, would you still support it? And without hesitation, he said no.
okay, I didn't see it.
Now, the thing for me there is you support it when it benefits,
Hmm.
but you don't support it when it doesn't benefit. And that was the thing that I was like, well, that's for me, now I can't trust anything that he says. Because I think, right, well, if you reneged really quickly on one thing that you were really supportive of because somebody that you didn't agree with or like was going to become prime minister, then what happens when?
Yeah, okay, I didn't see that interview, but okay.
No, and that's the thing for me is like ultimately from a party perspective, party politics and party policies need to be separate from these individuals that are ultimately going to lead the party. They're not the people that make the laws. They're not the people that pass the policies. They're not the people that ultimately make the decisions. They're just the face. They're the puppet of this machine. Now, I I like what I would like to happen is the policies that are purported to be on the table from Reform, from the Greens, from Labour, and even Kemi Badenoch. I mean, she's she's fighting a losing battle, poor lass. But she comes out with really good ideas and good policies, but there's no hope in hell of her getting in at least in the next 10 years whatsoever, thanks to the debacle that have gone before her. But I think she's doing a good enough job, to be fair. Now, you look at the policies that have been made, I want more explanation, more clarity. Like you mentioned, using the word austerity when nobody really knows what that means. Just stop with the nonsense. Stop with the bull. Like we see it at a local level. I mean, I've got no love lost with Oliver Ryan whatsoever. I invited him on to the podcast. He agreed. And then because I had Tom Pickup on, he denied, basically ignored me, and then abused me online.
Nice.
And it's like, look, you're in a public office. I'm having these people on to have these conversations. You're in different political spheres. I'm politically homeless. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I really have no affinity for one party or another. I will look at policies individually and think, I like that, and I like that, and I like that, and I like that. So that's where my vote's going. I'm not a serial voter. If I don't think there's anybody to vote for, I won't vote. But anyway, I see what he does on a daily basis. Because I follow, because it's my hometown,
Yeah.
and there's nothing really of any substance. It's all smoke, mirrors, and oh, look at me! Look how good I am! Look where I've been to visit!
All
Look what
hot
I
air.
do!
No, it's all hot air. But
And
unfortunately, it's
yeah,
all a cult of personality. And it
mhm,
can't be a cult of personality. And this is something that we've ingrained into the Burnley Green Party as we're reviving it. And our membership has doubled in the last 6
wow,
months. Not because of me, it's because of Zach Polanski's national leadership.
mm,
Nothing to do with me. But our party membership has doubled locally here. And one of the things that we insist upon is that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody needs to be able to carry on with the party. And so we've built and empowered people from within the party to hold positions of authority and decision making, whereby the party will continue to prosper, will continue to support our five, councillors now, will continue to thrive to have more councillors as we continue to grow, and so on and so forth. But again, it goes back to who we're doing this for. Who are we doing this for? Are we doing this for ourselves? Yeah. No, I hope not. And I hope we don't attract people like that to our party. I genuinely hope not, because again, if you want that, there are other parties who will give you that vanity space. You
mm.
know, look at all the ex-Tories who've
Well,
joined Reform.
you know what, I voted Reform at the last election,
Okay,
um, and I voted them because I agreed with them on certain points, and at the same time, I was sick and tired of the Tory
the
and Labour
usual. Yeah,
merry-go-round. Yeah,
yeah.
nothing. I've been
I get
through
it.
Tory governments, I've been through Labour governments. Nothing
Yes,
fucking changes. It
yeah,
stays the same. So probably my innate sense of disdain for authority is like, right, if
sure.
I can upset the apple cart, I'm going to upset the apple
Yes,
cart. Now, I I would have said probably 12 months ago, if somebody had asked me, are you going to vote Reform in the next election? I would have probably said, yeah, probably at this case. That means obviously the Green Party wasn't anywhere
yeah,
at that point.
true, true.
Liberal Democrats weren't coming around. Nobody knew that Keir Starmer was going to lie through his teeth and renege on every promise he made ever. I mean, when he gets home and says, honey, I'm home, she must run downstairs and double check that he's there, because she doesn't know whether he's telling the truth
Just
or
in
not,
case.
just in case. However, all the people that have jumped ship from Conservatives, and some from other parties as well, that have now become Reform councillors, that to me, or Reform members of Reform, that to me is ultimately a wolf in sheep's clothing. What you're doing is you're dressing up career politicians that have no real world experience. They've not been in the trenches with all of us at any point, doing the exact same thing that's been done the past 20, 30, past 500 years. They're doing the exact same thing. Now, the whole point of, and this is one thing that I really do like about the Green Party, is you've got people like Hannah in Gorton. She's a plumber. That's where she's come from. That's her roots.
Yeah.
She's not gone to Eton. She's not gone to rugby. She's not had a private school education. She doesn't
There's
do the
nothing wrong
whole.
with that. I just want to,
No, 100%. There's
great.
nothing wrong with it.
Good to you.
You have to. Look, we are a diverse
Don't know the
culture.
people. You don't know the challenges of Gorton and Denton.
Exactly, and this is the
Let's
thing.
put it this way. So in Gorton and Denton, right? I know the area very well.
Yeah, yeah.
number of times when I was a kid, I went to the cash point, yeah, in that fear, and it was an absolute fear that I'm not going to get any money out of this, and I need money, but the cash machine's not going to give me money because I don't have enough money in my bank account. If you've been to these public schools, I can pretty much guarantee you've never gone to a cash machine with that fear in your heart.
100%. Never.
And that's a real challenge. And that level of anxiety, yeah, you'd only know if you've ever experienced it.
I'll tell you a story now, and this is 100% true, and it was literally a month before I start. No, it wasn't. 2 months before I started the podcast, and I had finished my last construction job. I actually quit that Monday, and it was Monday, and I was going to pick up my daughter from school, and I had no money. I had no petrol in the car, but I knew I had 30 odd pounds in my bank before I got paid. So I thought, you know what? I'll leave at this time, go to the petrol station, put 20, 30, put 30 quid in, go and pick Esme up. And then it was, in fact, it was on a Wednesday because I was going to hockey. And I got to the petrol station, went to pay, put the money in, put the fuel in, went to pay, declined.
You said no.
And the panic set in. Bearing in mind, I'm now on a tight schedule. I've got to pick my daughter up and then get to
absolutely
hockey. Horrible. Now, this way. So I was on the phone with the bank. The card's been blocked. So on and so forth. Right. Well, you need to do something because I'm stood at the till. Bearing in mind, whilst this conversation is going on, if you've ever been on hold to a bank, the music that they play is infuriating.
It is.
Whilst you're there, so it was about 15 minutes, and that dread, I'm not going to get there to pick my daughter up. I'm not going to get her to do her hobby on time.
Yeah.
I've put money in a car. What are they going to do? Are they going to stop me from leaving? What? I'm trapped.
Is it going to become a criminal matter?
Exactly.
If it's a criminal matter, will I get a criminal record? If I get a criminal record, will I be able to get employed?
But the panic. So obviously, whilst I'm having this conversation, all that's going on in this side of my brain, and there was an Asian gentleman. I don't know his name. Never seen him again in my life. And he came up to me, and he put his arm on my shoulder, and he said, "I've got you." And I went, "Are you sure?" I said, "It's 30. You know, it's not like a tenner. It's like 30 quid." He paid for my fuel and left, and I've never seen him since. Now, that to me is all the bad bits and all the good bits of the human experience is the dread, the angst, the anxiety, the shame, the embarrassment, and then the redeeming qualities of somebody that I've never met. I didn't know his name, different race, different culture, different upbringing, and I will never forget that man till the day I die, because it wasn't somebody that looked like me, that spoke like me, that I grew up with or that I was around that saved me in that moment where I was drowning. It was somebody completely different that I didn't expect.
I can almost guarantee, and this is a human trait, is that individual would have most likely been from a similar social background to yourself. And I say that because wealthy people, are less likely to give. This is really strange. It's a really strange phenomena. Whereas those who have less in life are more likely to share. It's really weird. It's really weird. I went to Afghanistan for the first time, and I was sat there with Afghan labourers working in the camp, and they used to get 3 square meals a day as part of their rations. Right. And they insisted because I looked like them, but I was in a British uniform, that I ate with them. And I used to say to them, no, I get my food. I get my Alec. And they were like, no. No. Because I was sort of stranded in this camp for some strange reason. It's a long story. But the fact was I was stranded and I was in need of help. And they put their arms around me. And what they used to do was, between 20 of them, is that they all used to break up a bit of their bread and a bit of their curry and make me a plate out of theirs.
Yeah.
And I saw, this was the first time I really came across, where no, it's not I came across it. It really struck me that those who have the least in life are more likely to give you the little that they have,
Mm.
whereas those who have a lot in life are less likely because there's this fear of, well, do you know what? I've worked really hard at accumulating this wealth, and why should I share it with somebody else?
Yeah.
And this is a very human phenomenon.
It's and I think like nobody's sort of saying, and and I think this is this from my perspective as a local lad looking at local politics of Labour, Conservative, Reform, and Green. From my humble opinion, or not so humble opinion sometimes, I think in this constituency you fight in an uphill battle. One, because of the history,
Yes.
um, and two, because of national um, national opinion of the Green Party and the way that I don't know, we were speaking before, the sort of view of a Green Party from a bog standard point of view is an orange t-shirt, chucking paint over
Yeah, tree huggers.
the Mona Lisa and chaining themselves to trees and singing Kumbaya in the forest. And that's not necessarily, even though that does sound like a fun time, is not necessarily the tree hugging part. Not the throwing paint everywhere. The
Yeah,
tree
yeah.
hugging part, I'll get on with that.
But
But
there's a place for people like that.
course, and I
And
think
there's a place for people like me within the Green Party, and there's a place for people like yourself. And again, what it comes down to is as long as our values align,
mm,
as long as our values align, as long as what we want is a better future for our, next generations, as long as we want a better environment to live in today, where there's climate justice, where we're not poisoning our waters, we're not poisoning the air that we breathe, giving asthma to children. As long as we have trains that run on time, public services. We live in a semi-rural area, being Burnley.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, the hills are on our doorstep. If we can get a bus out there rather than a car, why not? But again, we need all of this in place if drugs can be looked at as a healthcare issue rather than a criminal issue. If, excuse me, I can go on and on and on and on and on. But the point is that regardless of whether we're white, black, yellow, brown, I don't know, pink, purple, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As
it's the
long as
societal issues. Yeah,
our interests are aligned, and our interests and our values are centered around having a good place to live, a healthy, respectful place to live. I think that's what matters more. I think it doesn't matter whether you don't like me because of the color of my skin.
yeah.
Really couldn't care. What I care about is that, are you going to be polite when
What's your
I'm in a
values?
queue? When
Yeah,
I'm in a queue.
I think that's it. At core level, most normal people are polite.
Yeah.
They're respectful to others as long as they have, they receive that. But I wanted to touch, just like coming towards the end now, but I wanted to touch on the drug decriminalization, not legalization, decriminalization. I've obviously lived a colourful youth, done quite a few different substances and whatnot growing up, whether that be MDMA, um, cannabis, all that sort of stuff, as one does when they're young and dumb and stupid
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
traveling
yeah.
the world. And the thing for me, I've always seen this. I've probably seen it since this legalization started to creep in America in terms of cannabis, and then looking intently at Portugal, Holland, and the psychedelic therapy that I went on and how it helped me. Then researching into the DMT stuff, the ibogaine stuff that's just been legalized or legalized in Texas, in the States, and the help and the good that it can do. And nobody with half a brain, regardless of whether you agree with the substances that are purported to be sold left, right, and center or not, anybody that does it at core level, take the product out of it, is a really good businessman. Really good. Because not only are they operating like massive scale businesses, they're doing it in a clandestine manner because they don't want to get caught. Now, the problem for me is that all these people that are within this network get paid money. None of that gets taxed.
Yep.
None of that gets audited.
Yep.
None of that is directly in the circulation of the economy.
That's right.
Now, and then on top of that, if you decriminalize things and you bring this world in from the cold or up from the depths of the dark,
Just have a grown-up conversation about this for a start.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you bring that out of the cold and into the light to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Not only do the product, and there's a massive problem in the States at the minute with fentanyl and things being laced with fentanyl. Now, you regulate things like that, that problem disappears overnight.
Instantly.
See you later, bye bye. And that's what they did in Portugal.
Yeah.
Stopped. Overdoses decreased by 78% over a 12-month period, which is phenomenal.
Usage dropped.
Yeah, and usage dropped, which is
rates plummeted.
It's just bonkers. And I think it's the same premise of the prisons in Norway and even kids at school and kids at training, like hockey training or football training. If you treat somebody as a human, as an autonomous thinking being, and you give them responsibility, 9 times out of 10, they rise to the occasion. And they sort it out, and they I know for a fact, if I give my daughter something to do and she feels like she's on my team, she will run through brick walls to get that thing done.
Yeah.
Now, if she thinks I'm against her, she becomes the immovable object. It's impossible. And I think that's the same with there's a massive, it all started with Nancy and Ronald Reagan, and the war on drugs, and
It was before that. It was
propaganda,
the criminalization of cannabis or hemp.
Yeah, well, and that was the oil industry that funded that, because the petroleum industry.
Yeah, and the tobacco industry.
Yeah,
tobacco was being harvested on a global scale. And in fact, people, what are you going to do? You're going to smoke hemp or tobacco. You can't make rope after tobacco. There's a lot of other medicinal uses for it. Anyway, the point is that look, we're in an age whereby we have so much scientific data.
Yes. Like we're still working on systems and things. Like, for instance, the government health.
It's a wet finger in the air that, I think it's bad for you. It's like, come on.
Is it though? Yeah.
We have so much scientific data. We have veterans in this country who suffer from PTSD.
Oh.
Their highest rates of homelessness amongst veterans. Substance abuse amongst veterans, suicide amongst veterans, and one of the most beneficial medicines for the treatment of PTSD is cannabis in a regulated form.
They're doing it with MDMA as well. They're doing trials with PTSD,
microdosing and so on. But the point is that let's have a sensible approach, as opposed to, do you know what? All heroin addicts, they're all crackheads, and therefore they're scum. And let's not touch them with a barge pole. No, because that's not the right way to deal with this. It's not a grown-up method to deal with this efficiently.
Well, it's not a democratic method. It's the fact that the people that are making the policies and rules have never experienced this issue. So if you had,
know what? Let's go back to randomly drug testing the House of Parliament. I'll tell you,
what they might do. Yeah,
you're an absolute deviant who likes a bit of powdering your nose on a weekend. Then crack on, But no. The point is that, look, those people who are in power, they have generational wealth, largely speaking. Not all of them, and I don't mean to largely speaking, those who make the policies and so on, the civil service and so on at the highest levels, what they've come from is very privileged backgrounds. And if they were ever to succumb to substance abuse or any sort of challenges like that in life, rest assured that perhaps a large percentage of them would be able to fall back on their families who could support them through that rehabilitation journey, whether it's going into a formal establishment, an institution that could help them, or, other means. However, when you come from a working class background, right, from broken home, from lots of social issues surrounding you all the time, that anxiety, those personal dilemmas, and so on, and you don't have generational wealth to support you in that rehabilitation process, that journey, there's only one way. There's only one. And if you've never seen any better, if you've never seen people around you who've been sober, who are
Yes.
able to make decisions sober, who are able to aspire to be greater in life, you know, and have that social network around you to help you as well, to pull you out, then you've never seen anything. You've never seen an alternative. You don't know there's an alternative reality. So what's stopping you from continuing down this route? Nothing. And
No,
this is
I think that brings us perfectly full circle in terms of I I know from personal experience, I'm now 5.5 years, no alcohol. So I gave up alcohol 5.5 years ago. No caffeine and what was the other? Oh, nicotine. Nicotine's over 12 months now as well. So that, but I've never. I grew up working class background, pub on a weekend, pub after work, especially in construction. It was always like, oh, we'll finish, we'll knock off early, have a couple of pints, and then off we go. Or get home from work and have 2 or 3 cans of an evening.
it's a cultural thing.
Of course it is.
It is.
And I think going all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, Arfan, was the reading element and learning and understanding, one, what alcohol does to your body, what caffeine does to your body and to your brain, what nicotine does to your body and your brain. Me doing the research on my own and reading the scientific papers and reading this and reading that led me to the point of like, right, well, I'm going to stop that because all this evidence is pointing to the fact that that's being really bad for me. It's not good for me at all. So I'm going to knock that on the head. Same with nicotine, same with caffeine. And
And it's
I
not just
didn't,
from a health
I,
perspective either. Sorry, Louis. Sorry to
no, no, I didn't have that physical example.
personal relationship perspective with other people.
Mm,
It's an intoxicant. I mean, nobody could tell me alcohol is not an intoxicant like any other drug. And because it's an intoxicant, it prevents you, and this is why Islam outlaws alcohol, because it prevents you from being in a sober state of mind. So when you're
mm.
making decisions, those decisions aren't sober decisions. So you're likely to be impaired in your decision making. If you're impaired in your decision making, then it impacts your relationships with those who you love most. No?
Well, it
So
impacts
take this
everything.
from personal experience. I'm not saying this as an outsider looking in. I'm saying this from personal experience. It impacts, your an individual's personal relationships, their well-being, the well-being of the people that they love around them, their friends and family, and so on and so forth. And so it goes well beyond just the personal health aspects as well. But anyway, the point is that, like you're saying, going full circle, if I may, you asked me why I was interested in getting into politics and how I did. Just
Yeah. Going all the way back.
going all the way back. So when I literally day one at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, my instructor, and it was a very, very overwhelming, daunting experience. Massive. Coming from Manchester, Cheetham Hill, Asian guy, subjected to, a lot of racism growing up, but not that didn't mar because again, my parents were educated and they told me, you treat human beings as human beings, and and so on and so forth. But going from this very, very humble background, and it was a very humble background, to being at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst with hundreds of years of tradition and these huge white columns as you enter Old College, and it was so, so overwhelming. But I remember on the first day, my instructor, and he was a Scouser, and he was a colour sergeant from the Irish Guards, Nick Perry, I'll say his name, and a great, great man. And on day one, he said, "Gentlemen," as we were all stood together, and he said, "Gentlemen, the standard that you walk past is the standard you'll accept." and that stuck with
I
me.
like it.
And it goes down to, you know what? If there's litter, you're walking past litter on your road. You walk past that, you're going to accept that,
Mm.
right? So pick it up. How much effort does it take for you to pick up that litter? Now, you see something going on that you're not happy with, and if you walk past it, bear in mind, if it's unsafe, probably best to leave it. If it's not unsafe and you're happy to walk past it, then that is the standard you will accept. Now, what I see around me in terms of the not just a national situation, the international situation that we're living in, this bubble, and all the way down to where I live in Burnley, I'm not willing to stand by and accept it.
No,
Something inside me, there's, you know, it just, yeah, I'm not willing to.
it becomes so uncomfortable, and that's what it did for me. It became so
Yeah.
uncomfortable that,
Yes,
like we were talking just then about alcohol, it affects everything.
yes,
It makes me
everything.
a bit sharper with my children. It makes me sharper with my missus. It makes me not enjoy getting up in the morning because I'm worried about X, Y, Z, and that sort of, I said right at the beginning, I think off camera, off before we were recording, the sort of put up or shut up um, scenario is, listen, if you know, if anybody that doesn't like the current state of affairs with the country or with your local area, then you are the person to make the change.
Yes.
Because if you don't make the change and you're waiting for somebody else, they might be waiting for you. And then they might be waiting for somebody else. And then they might be waiting for somebody else. It needs pioneers and it needs people to take the bull by the horns and do something about it, whether that be like myself having conversations and speaking to
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
and airing the things that in my opinion need to be aired and need to be given the light of day, or whether it be people like yourself that get involved in the political sphere and try and change it from within, or whether it be, you know, journalists that actually report things truthfully, unbiasedly, like they should do, regardless of pay or regardless of publication. Um, Things like that shouldn't be rare are far too rare, and I hope with hand on heart that in the coming years it becomes a hell of a lot less rare. I think it should become commonplace where
Yeah.
everybody works to change the world for the better, whether it be from their eyes or whether it be through the eyes of anybody else. Just take action, do something, make it positive as well. My therapist, my life coach, Kathleen, who is the second episode on the podcast, she does an exercise called 67 seconds. Basically 67 seconds of affirmation of a certain situation instills it into your brain that basically has an effect. But it's called "Wouldn't It Be Nice?"
Oh, excuse me.
It's
Oh,
okay.
excuse
It's
me.
got to come from, you can't. Wouldn't it be nice if this didn't happen? Because that's a negative kind of. You can't do that. It's always got to be from a positive space. So
Yeah.
it's like, instead of saying, "Wouldn't it be nice if they didn't say that they don't like me?" It's got to be, "Wouldn't it be nice if they actually liked me?" So it's that,
You're more
it's
appreciative. Basically,
that perspective.
there's no negativity in that framing.
Yes, and I think that with politics and with community, society, base level, if we can all concentrate on doing something positive rather than negative, it could be, like you said, picking up the litter. Pick up the litter and invite somebody to come pick litter up with you, rather than admonishing the person that littered.
Do you know, and as long as it's not something at the expense of somebody else.
Yes, that's it. Everybody wants their
That's
own.
it.
Robin Hood says it perfectly in the movie with Russell Crowe. He says, every man, it's the sort of saying of every man's home is his castle, and every man has the right to live off the sweat of his own brow. That's just what people want. People want, in essence, And I think when you get to this age, people just want to be left alone.
Yeah,
Leave me alone. Let me
yeah,
live my life. I want to eat every day. I want to have a water source. I want to have a roof over my head. I want to have my family around me. Aside from that, I'm not that bothered. You know, yes, it's awful what's happened in the Middle East, and yes, it's awful what happens in Russia or Ukraine. But it's at the same time, it's not on my doorstep, and
absolutely.
I know it's bad, but is it going to really affect my life?
I say this about, politics here, in that I get it. Down in Kent, they have an issue with people coming in on small boats. In
Hmm.
Burnley, we don't have an issue with people coming in on small boats.
Well, only through the reservoirs.
Yeah, but
But
it's not.
yeah,
I
it's
suppose wait, that's not my problem. My problems here are very different. Very
yeah, and I
different.
think takes me like I'll end on this because it's a really good point to end on. I have Jehovah's Witness. Well, they haven't knocked on for about 12 months actually, because I think the last time they knocked on, I had them for an hour at the door. But the lady, she was a lovely lady. She's about late 60s, early 70s. And she mentioned about God. It's God's purpose to create paradise on earth. But we have to live in his way to create paradise on earth. And I said, and me being me, said, well, I think your idea of paradise and my idea of paradise of poles apart. Like, my idea of paradise is playing sport, going surfing, going
Yeah,
skiing.
yeah.
I don't think you want to do that, do you? And she said, well, no. I said, well, if you think about it, isn't it our job to create our own paradise on earth through the motivation of God? And it was that good. I actually managed to sort of get her to say, I'm going to bring it up at the
I love
next
that.
sort of thing. And I think, if everybody can just concentrate on creating their own paradise, it is easy. It, sorry, no, it is simple. It is very fucking simple. It's just not
Not easy.
easy. And, when you get the influencers, social media influencers that say, oh, I made this much money today and this much money today. Oh, it's easy. It isn't easy. It is, everything is simple. You want to quit smoking? It is so simple. Just don't smoke. But might be one of the hardest things you've ever had to do in your life. But it is very simple. Just make the decision not to smoke. And that's the thing. The best things in life, you can create the life that you want. Anything you want to do. You want to become an astronaut? It is a very simple thing to do.
Sure, work hard.
Just
And
work hard and follow.
luck. You need a lot of luck.
Yeah, but it is simple. It's just not easy.
It's not easy.
And it's the exact same with everything in the world. It's not simple, but it's not easy, but it is very simple. And I think that's it. I massively appreciate you, Affan.
Oh
Two and
no,
a half
thank
hours
you.
were up.
But oh wow, oh wow,
I know.
didn't realize.
It
But you know,
goes very quickly.
the only two topics that we've spoken about for the last 2.5 hours are politics and religion,
I
and
know.
we've not argued once, despite
True.
being of different persuasions. Clearly, we've
Mm-hmm.
not argued once, and again, it just goes to show actually we have far more in common than we do in difference, despite the color of our skin.
100%. And I think that's the biggest thing is this civil discourse, which is what it is. I don't agree with everything that you've got to say. You don't agree with everything I've got to say. But we can do that civilly. And the
Yeah,
fact that that's disappeared from sort of the mainstream arena, I saw it the other day. It was, I think it might have been yesterday actually, because it made me think about texting you. It was the Labour Instagram page, which whoever manages that, I'd love to meet, because he put on he moved from this Farage taking over the whole social media of Labour to it's now Zach Polanski, where they've got him coloured as a green bottle saying bottle job. And it's like, well, what's Labour about? Can we talk, like, that's your channel. Stop diminishing everybody else and think about yourself. And that things like that, where civil discourse disappears, that's when problems arise. There's a really good quote, actually. I'll end on this. I will definitely end on this. And I think it comes from Orwell, where it says, when society starts arguing about what is good and what is bad, rather than what is true and what is false, that is the beginning of the end. And I think that's where we're at. Is like, this person's bad. Yeah, but is he right or is he wrong? Is it true or is it false what he's saying? Well, this person's good. Yeah, but is that true or false? Like, we need to start having these difficult conversations and having these, friction makes fire. And if it's left wing and right wing, most people will end up central, because the left will give some ground and so will
Yes.
the right.
Yes.
And that's where most people are, and that's where we need to get to.
I agree.
So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank
If
you.
people want to get involved with the Green Party in Burnley, what do they do? Where do they go? How do they do it?
Get on the website, Google Burnley Green Party, reach out to us. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Just reach out to us. Come and say hello. Come and have a
Brilliant. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Affan. Massively appreciate it. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.